Your house is worth whatever it's worth, right? Whoever sells it. Wrong. I'm Charlie. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie, and thank you for coming.
Charlie Landing grew up in Sussex, is the founder of Best Agent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same.
So Charlie, what would be your advice for people interested in buying new builds right now?
Don't overpay. Do buy, but don't overpay. That's why I say disregard the guff. Read into the numbers and look, and it's buried. The bad news is buried in the small print, okay?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
They may or may not be telling the truth, but you should form your own view. Get out and view, get out and view, get out and view. You cannot be in a position to make offers and have the offers accepted if you're not viewing. Just be out there viewing. Pay attention to the back of the class. If you've not been watching my videos, I did one just a couple of days ago. Disregard the guff, guys. Good evening, everybody. That is the kettle boiling. I'm in the tiniest hotel room I've ever been in. I did actually get home to Devon on Saturday night, and I had 36 hours at home, and I'm back in London because I've got a really big important meeting. I'm in King's Cross tonight, and I'm in literally a single hotel room. It's under the stairs. I feel like Harry Potter. In tonight's live stream, I want to talk about the jobs data that was published today. And I want to do it because I really want to make sure that nobody is rushing in, getting into bidding wars and overpaying for a property and putting themselves in danger of negative equity. Now, 2 years ago, when I started first calling the fact that I see house prices were going to decline, very few, if any, people were in negative equity. The market had been very strong for a long time. Now, and I know this because some of you actually contact me to tell me, 2 years after the peak of the housing market in the UK, or certainly in England and Wales anyway, there are people in negative equity. There are people whose homes are now worth less than the mortgage balance outstanding on that home, meaning that they can't sell without having to put their hand in their pocket and find the difference between what they owe on the house and what the house is worth. And even though overall house prices haven't come down as much as I expected them to by now, they have at the higher end of the market. They've come down as expected at the higher end of the market, but the rest of the market, they haven't. I really worry that it's creating a false sense of security for buyers. I spoke to an agent today who said he's never known it this busy in December. And he says it almost all appears to be buyers wanting to beat the stamp duty deadline on the 1st of April. And he actually said, it doesn't make any sense. They're overpaying more for the property than the stamp duty would cost them. He said, people just get obsessed with the deadline. I must beat the deadline, must beat the deadline. And even if I pay more to beat the deadline than the deadline would cost me, I'm still going to do it. It's just the sort of tunnel vision. It's like we saw during the stamp duty deadline that happened during COVID. It's very, very unwise to be rushing into buying property now if you are in a bidding scenario. Now, having said that, excuse me, there are plenty of properties for sale which have been on the market a long time, and they've got switched on buyers who are well prepared going and look at them and making offers, and there are bargains to be had at this time of year, especially in certain places. And so if you're bidding on a property this December, but you're the only one bidding on the property and you've really carefully worked out your maximum comfortable price, I'm not too concerned for you. You're probably not going to be overpaying in terms of what the market value is. And as far as your own personal circumstances are concerned, well, that's just down to you being wise about the future. But if I feel so sorry for all of the first-time buyers, especially, who don't watch my channel and who are being completely taken in by the ONS's misreporting of initial house prices, making everybody believe that house prices are going up when house prices aren't going up. And as I got a message from Kicking Mustang today, as he pointed out to me, when they initially announce them too high, when it's published with a press release, and they say, oh, house prices have risen year on year. A year later, they lower that number because they add in all the revisions from a whole year of transactions and go, oh, actually, sorry, no, it wasn't that high, it's actually down here. It makes it easier for them to then report the latest year's figures as having risen when they haven't, almost doubling down on the misleading effect of it. Now, especially people who've never watched my channel haven't heard of me, and I'm just some random bloke on the internet. I'm the only person, I mean, truly, I'm the only person that I'm aware of who is consistently, along with Alex's help, Stiggy's help, trying to get the message out there that average figures for the housing market are misleading. You've got to look at it locally and regionally, and depending on it's freehold or leasehold, top of the ladder or first time buyer, all of these things, you've got to look at your particular market. As a lot of you very kindly report to me on a regular basis, there are prices, there are a reduction in asking prices happening, and it varies, okay? And of course, anywhere in the country where a very desirable property comes onto the market at an apparently attractive price, that's going to sell very quickly with competing bids. And credit to the agent and the seller of those properties for coming to market intelligently and getting sold quickly. The trouble is that some of the buyers who haven't watched my channel are the buyers who bid on that and missed out, and they think that that reflects the whole market. They're ignoring the property they're not interested in. They're just looking at the one they think, oh, that's a nice one. Oh, it's flown off the shelf. And they misinterpret that as meaning that the whole market's going crazy. And there are people, especially on TikTok. It's always on TikTok. I don't know why, but the level of awareness and insightfulness and curiosity on TikTok is very, very different from all the other platforms. But on TikTok, I get endless people laughing at me going, house prices are going to the moon. They're only going up. It's supply and demand, mate. They're not going to go down. They're going to go up, 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 up. With no data whatsoever. It's just because they heard it in the pub or something. And we've already had several bits of news out this week. I mean, the ONS did that report on house price affordability today. But this was the report that came out that got a lot of headlines today, which is the steep reduction in permanent staff placements. So job vacancies have seen a really steep decline. And let me try to put my own views to one side and just be completely impartial about it. Let's say that in 2025, there are three potential scenarios. One, the government stimulates growth. Magically, there is growth back in the economy. No one knows where it's come from, but there's growth in the economy and everyone's hiring again. And everyone, if that happens, everyone will be able to look back at me in this video and laugh at me and tell me how wrong I was. And in that scenario, I'll be like, okay, well, as long as you thought it through and before you went and bought, that's fine. Because I always say, don't wait. And I am not, the purpose of this video is not to say, oh, you shouldn't buy, because you should always buy a home if you need one, want one, and have found one that you can afford without overstretching yourself, that you're intending to stay in for a long time. Always. But what I'm particularly worried about, it's already happening despite my best efforts, and it's going to continue to happen. And I worry that it's going to accelerate next year, because there are still 50% of mortgage holders whose mortgages have not yet risen, whose fixed rates come to an end in 2025. More people's mortgage payments going up. If you look at the current trend for unemployment and job vacancies, it's negative, and it looks to get worse. And we're looking at record insolvencies on businesses. But let's just say, for example, that actually the economy kind of continues to flatline and just stay at 0% growth, or almost 0% growth. Then, yeah, there's slightly less risk about that, because there are always people who want to buy homes. But if we look at the worst case scenario, or not even the worst case, just the likely scenario of job vacancies continuing to fall, unemployment continuing to rise, wage growth stopping because all of the companies have said that's what's going to happen, and therefore there being less demand. And by the way, guys, I need to repeat this as often as possible, right? People does not equal demand. If you have two people, one wants to buy a house and has a mortgage, one wants to buy the same house but doesn't have a mortgage, that person might want the house, that's desire, but they aren't demand because they can't offer on it. Even though that's a real live breathing person. This person, no mortgage, can't buy. This person with mortgage can buy. That is demand. This guy isn't. And no matter how many of these guys there are, if they haven't got mortgages, they're not demand. Okay? So if more people start to lose their jobs next year, and if fewer people are employed, as this report suggests, there will be fewer people in a position to buy a house, which means that there'll be fewer people competing and bidding against each other, which means that prices will, generally speaking, come down. There are always exceptions. Okay. Let's just have a quick look at this data so that people can get a feel for it, right? And I put a link to this report below. So this is from the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, who say, and this is released today, and this is their own website. So this is the source of the report. Steep reduction in permanent staff placements, but temp market decline eases, right? So this is 400. This is a survey of 400 UK recruitment and employment consultancies. Staff appointments tumble in November. Okay, so this is the KPMG/REC report on job survey, signaled an accelerated decline in the number of people placed in permanent positions. It was already declining, and now it's accelerated. The decline, the reduction in the number of people placed in permanent positions by UK recruitment consultants. Overall, the fall was the steepest recorded by the survey since August 2023, amid widespread reports of reduced vacancies. Many respondents signal that the budget had led to uncertainty and the reassessment of staffing needs by clients. Okay. So salary growth. Now, wage growth is an even stronger correlation to house prices than employment numbers. Whilst skilled candidates were often reported to be able to command higher salaries, pay growth tended to be limited by higher candidate availability, in other words, more people looking for work, and reduced demand for staff, less jobs. Steepest reduction in vacancies since August 2020. It was the 13th successive month. Oh, you can't see this, can you? Let me just try and make it bigger. Sorry, guys. I have linked it below for those of you who want to read it. It was the 13th successive month in which a fall in staff demand has been registered, and the latest drop was the greatest recorded for over 4 years. An especially severe drop in demand was seen for permanent workers. Especially severe drop in demand for permanent workers. And November was also the steepest rise of people looking for work. All right. So hopefully you can see what I'm trying to say here. Okay. For those of you who are considering buying a home or considering moving, factor all of these things in. All right. And please, please, please stop believing this relentless bollocks from Halifax record house prices. Like, I don't dispute that the average value of the mortgages they are lending on, the average value of the transactions might be slightly higher, especially as they have a northern UK bias. Geographically, they tend to be more in the north, and Nationwide has more in the south. I'm not disputing that they have seen the average transaction value of the transactions that they are funding increase. I'm not calling them liars. What I'm saying is that is not representative of the entire UK housing market. It excludes cash transactions. It's a small I had some mortgage broker laughing, they're one of the biggest lenders, Charlie. I know, but there's still a very small proportion of overall lending, like around 10%. They don't even confirm what their market share of lending is. Okay. If they did, it would carry more weight. But people just accept it. Oh, it's Halifax. Must be true. House prices. House prices. And it's that phrase, house prices, that everyone hears and thinks, oh, house prices. They're all the same. It's house prices. And like zombies, like fucking lemmings, people go, oh, house prices up. Oh, I'll buy then. And because there aren't enough people going, hang on a second, just ignore the national figures, because what matters is your finances, your market, the property you want to buy. That's what matters. What's happening in the market where you're buying? Is that going up? Because it might be that Halifax's national average is going up, but the market where you're buying isn't going up. Oh, but Halifax said they're going up, so it must be okay. I don't know what to do to help avoid more people. Oh, I mean, all I can do is more videos like this. Mad Max 2000. I smashed like, and now my laptop's broken. Very funny. Right, got any questions here? Hello, Ditchhead, Anthony Wood, Modi, Leo, Craptacular, Ricky, Roni Bomick, Tufail, Robert Jones, 360 Picture, John Ald. Yes, I'm on hotel Wi-Fi here. It is not too bad. Okay, this is a question people need to understand. Are things so I'm afraid I can't read your name. I can't read Chinese or Cantonese or whatever that is. Are things really that bad? Asks this person. The FTSE 100 is up again today. I'm not aware of any correlation between the FTSE 100 and employment or wages or even GDP. I'm not aware of any way in which the FTSE 100 influences the housing market directly, perhaps indirectly, but directly it makes no difference. And if you look at what the FTSE 100 is made up of, it's a lot of mining stocks and petrol and oil and that kind of stuff, and not necessarily things that affect everyday people who are trying to buy houses. So the FTSE can be going up whilst we're in recession. Both of those things can be possible. And what really matters for housing market demand is how many people are in employment, what's happening to their wages, and do they want to move or not? Okay, because that's what needs to, either they've got to be cash. If they're cash buyers, they need to be employed. But if they need a mortgage, they're going to need to be in work or they won't get a mortgage. And they need to want to move. And that is something that people are underestimating, okay? Because wanting to move is affected by certainty. And there are a lot of people who kind of would like to move, but not now. Don't we're a bit too worried about our job or the economy or whatever else might be. And GDP per head, no matter what's happening to the FTSE, GDP per head is not going up at the moment. Tufail asks, how bad are things? Is 2025 a good time to buy with stamp duty going up? Have you found a house you want to live in that you can afford, that you want to buy? That's the only context in which this question makes sense. Because if you're asking from a financial point of view, then it's no longer a good financial investment to buy property. I've made that really clear in as many videos as I can. If you're looking to buy property to make money, I would suggest no, it's not a good time at all. I'd suggest it's a terrible time to do that, unless you are a seasoned professional and you are buying and doing up and selling, or you're a portfolio landlord. For people who think, oh, I'll buy a property and just make money by owning property, that ship has sailed. So if you're talking about buying property for financial gain, no, it's a terrible time to buy. Terrible time to buy. But that shouldn't stop you buying a home if you want a home, as long as you aren't overpaying for it. So 360 Picture UK, who is obviously someone who photographs houses for estate agents. I agree with the busy statement. I've never been this busy in December before. How many Decembers have you been going? And goes on to say, I think it'll be quiet after this week. Agents I work with all think it will be busy in the new year with those wanting to beat the stamp duty in April. If you haven't got your deal agreed before Christmas, the chances of getting your deal completed before April are really quite low. P says, question, landlord selling equals higher rents? Not automatically, not necessarily. Let me just explain why. Because when a landlord sells, roughly speaking, and it does vary, about half of the properties being sold by landlords are bought by other landlords. And it tends to be smaller landlords selling up their one or two properties that they've got, or even three or four sometimes. And there are other landlords with cash who don't need to borrow. And if you don't have the interest cost of a mortgage and you're a landlord, then you can still make a healthy living and run a healthy business as a landlord if you have a managed portfolio of properties. So there are landlords buying as well. Landlords selling equals higher rents. So not automatically, but yes, generally speaking, if there are fewer tenanted properties available. The other thing is, right, so let's just say we have 10 landlords selling properties. 5 of them get bought by other landlords. So that's a net. That hasn't changed the supply equation. That's still the same. Of the remaining 5, 4 of them get bought by first-time buyers who are in rented, and they are therefore leaving the rental demand and freeing up other rental properties back into the market. So those 4, again, don't actually affect the demand. The properties stay there. The properties that they were living in as tenants are now freed up because they've now bought a place. Maybe 1 in 10 of the buyers buying the landlord's properties that is being sold are moving from their parents. And therefore, they were never part of the demand, and they are actually taking one property out of the supply equation. So landlords selling up is a net negative impact on houses available to rent, but not as much as everybody thinks it is. Anyway, landlord selling equals higher rents equals more buyers and higher sales prices. Yeah, that's the here. I'm trying to sell a buy-to-let in London. Yes, unfortunately, it's not that straightforward. It's not that straightforward. Because also you don't tend to get the landlord selling and the higher rents and the more buyers all in the same place necessarily. And if you're trying to sell a buy-to-let in London, are you selling it with a tenant in there, or is it empty? Because if you're selling an ex rental and if it's a leasehold, leaseholds are really, really, really not popular in London at the moment because of service charges and uncertainty about the future of service charges. And because if you buy a leasehold as a landlord, you have an income with which to service and offset the fact the lease is decreasing. But as a homeowner, you're buying a depreciating asset if you buy a leasehold. But no, landlords selling doesn't equal more buyers and higher sales prices. I'm afraid it equals lower sales prices because it's on top of the typical number of homeowners selling, you've got landlords selling as well. So there's more supply on the market. And so if you look at the supply levels where you're selling in London, you'll see that unless it's in a very weird exceptional area, the number of properties for sale is very high and climbing. And so buyers have a lot more choice. Yeah. So Andrew Taylor says new housing developments here in Dorset are being mothballed. What could possibly go wrong? This is the point. I'm hearing exactly that from all over the country. New developments being mothballed, but that doesn't get reported nearly as much as record house prices. I mean, you can literally almost paint a picture of these first-time buyers going, "Oh, yes, this house price is going up. Oh, Halifax, this house price is going up." I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make them out to be thick. That's not fair. You know, they look around, and also their parents' generation go, "Oh, it can't go wrong with bricks and mortar. Property prices double every 10 years, and the ONS says they're going up, and Halifax says they're going up, and you need a home anyway, so just buy. You can't go wrong." And like people that I've had calling me on one-to-one calls saying that's why they bought 2 years ago, and now they're stuffed. That problem's going to get worse. Yeah, I agree with that, Fernando Pestana. Time the councils bought up property and rented it out cheaply and buy-to-let greed. Councils should be buying up property to rent out, I agree, and building it. I don't agree that all housing should be owned by the councils. No, I don't agree with that. That's not true. I think councils should own enough homes to meet government housing obligations. No more. Outside that, you let the market do its own thing, right? And the government shouldn't interfere with the private sector market. It shouldn't boost lending. It shouldn't give loan guarantees. It shouldn't give help to buy schemes. It shouldn't do any of those things because that is artificial stimulus in the market and it always ends badly. Look what's happening in the car market right now. The government has interfered and has started mandating what cars should be made and what cars should be sold. Well, nobody asked the consumer what they wanted. And now the consumer is voting with their wallet and going, no, don't want to buy them. Sorry. And what's happening? All the car manufacturers are stuffed, absolutely stuffed, and having the biggest shocker they've had in decades. Why? Because they were all forced to make cars nobody wants to buy. That is a great example of why, in a free market economy, the government should stay the away from free markets and private markets and let them do things. Yes, regulate at the edges to stop extreme negative things happening. They create a ring fence of some kind, but within that ring fence, you let the market do its thing. So yes, legislate for safety. That's fine. You want to make it mandatory to have seatbelts in the back. No one argued with that kind of government thing, right? If the government says, look, we're going to mandate seatbelts in the back of cars, that's not interfering with a marketplace. That's simply legislating for safety. I have no problem with that to a degree. I think they can go too far. But now we've also got governments mandating geofencing and stuff in cars. What? Why? Nobody asked for that. Nobody voted for that. So just stay out of it. Stay out of it. I don't think the government should own all housing. People who save up and want to buy and own a house should be able to do that without going through the government. Majid asks, how much in housing benefit goes to private landlords? That is an excellent question. I don't know the answer to that. What I do know the answer to is how much in housing benefit or government subsidized accommodation goes on temporary accommodation. All right. And it's £1.7 billion a year. Nearly 140 million pounds a month is being paid for hotels and bed and breakfasts. Not even for renting from the private renter sector. Hotels and bed and breakfast, £1.7 billion a year. That is money down the drain and gone. And if they were spending that money building social homes instead, we, the taxpayer, would have a better return on that money. Yes, I agree. Those tenants should be housed in state-owned property. Absolutely. And if that was done, everything would be better. Alex says, spot on, Charlie. I want a house, but I'm not demand because I'm broke. Thank you for the cheerful point. Yes. And Arthur O'Cathan says the person without a mortgage might be a cash buyer. Yes, of course, they might be a cash buyer. I did actually say that, but I'm saying person with means to buy versus person without means to buy, right? That's my point. Majid says we should all have a sovereign wealth fund in the UK like Norway has. That would require the government to actually have funds to invest. The reason Norway has a sovereign wealth fund is because Norway's government has managed its natural resources so well that it's made a massive profit, or it did make a massive profit as a government. So the government generated huge surpluses and created a wealth fund with them. The UK government hasn't been creating a surplus for decades, I don't think. Just trying to catch up on the comments. Alex says, is Charlie ever at home? Not at the moment. This is the third week in a row I've been away from home all week. Yes, Miss Jane 782 says, "Your wife must be a saint with 3 young kids and all this time on the road." I know. I'm hoping that they might be actually joining me in London this week, but it depends on other family stuff happening. So, and I'm missing them horribly. Ba, 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 ba. Thomas Moran says lots of price declines in Norfolk and Hull from my viewings. Okay, Mark Reynolds Corden. Hello, Mark. I'm sorry you've had to wait 10 minutes for me to get to your question. As a proponent of sellers pricing aggressively and generating interest/offers, should you reject a first decent offer and still wait? What do you say to the buyer who may have offered full asking price? Now, this is an interesting question because the whole point of pricing aggressively is that you get competing offers. That's the goal. And if you haven't got competing offers, then you can't be sure that you've got the best price. Now, the offer that you've had may or may not be one that you're willing to accept to move on with. But without knowing a lot more about your situation, it's hard to know what to advise in this situation. So you've had a first decent offer. The fact that you say it's a decent offer suggests to me that you feel that it's not an unreasonable, not an unfair offer. If it is a good offer, and by that I don't mean the price, I mean if it's a solid, proceedable, the buyer is serious and they can move quite quickly kind of offer, in this particular market, I would, all other things being equal, I would generally suggest taking it. If you've got a decent offer in this market and you're selling and you need to move, I would suggest taking it, because what would be the worst mistake? Accepting this offer and then finding out later that you might have got a bit more money, because that's one downside, right? That's one mistake. Or not accepting the offer and then it goes and then later on you wish you had accepted it. I think the latter is a much bigger mistake to make. So hopefully the agent's still trying to get you more offers, but hope that answers that question. Kim Thomas says, I bought a house in 4 days when I was in a contract race. I had an excellent solicitor. Yes, if both parties are ready, there is absolutely no reason why transactions can't happen very, very fast. The only thing that slows it down is when if everyone's ready, the only thing that can't be sped up is if there's a mortgage involved and the lender wants to do a survey and wants to get the search pack results. Yeah, that's a very good point. Alex Jenkins says houses have carrying costs too, so builders should be careful not to build too many. Someone needs to be able to afford to carry. You're quite right. If you just leave a house, an unheated house, sat and empty, they rot really quickly. Unheated houses rot really quickly. I mean, in months. This is what I mean when I say they are a depreciating asset, right? They are not an investment class like everything else where you can put your money into that investment class and just leave it there, right? Houses have got to be maintained, heated, taxed, everything else. People don't factor that in. If more first-time buyers factored in the true ownership costs of a house, they'd be much more careful about what they paid. Just catching up with the comments here. Just looking for questions. Okay, Mark Reynolds Corden, following up that question from earlier about taking a first offer. The situation is hypothetical. We're not yet on the market, but I wondered what the narrative would be to a buyer who offers full asking, but the asking price was intentionally low to drum up interest. Okay, yeah, okay. Now I understand the question better. If the marketing, right, if the photography is done correctly, the details are done right, the description is written well, if the pricing level is just right, and if you get competing bids, you should get the offers coming concurrently. And what an agent will tend to do is to say, we've got X viewings happening. And if the first person who offers, but there are still viewings to be done, the agent will typically say to that person, thanks very much for your offer. We're going to wait until these other people have viewed it and see if there are any other offers. So you don't have to accept or reject it if there are other viewings in the diary in the next few days. Okay, so that's, and you only get the chance to do this once. As a seller, you can only do an initial launch once, and that's why it's so important. And it takes real skill. You really do need a skillful agent to do this, right? They get it just right. They time it right. They know the local timings of the market and when people are going to be busy or not busy, the kind of buyers that are going to be for that property, whether they're affected by school holidays or not, all that kind of stuff. And they'll time it right, and they'll get you your multiple viewings and your offers, and you should have a good agent will get you hopefully at least 3 concurrent competing offers on the table to pick from. All right, guys. Ronnie Bomick says, with the Bank of England governor predicting more rate cuts, is there a chance of mortgage rates coming down in 2025, or is it guff? First of all, the Bank of England governor hasn't predicted more rate cuts. Okay, it's really important, and that's not what he's done. He hasn't said there will be more rate cuts. He's saying what he's expecting based on certain things happening, but he always has to put caveats in there. And there's a huge amount of unknown stuff happening outside the Bank of England's control in both America and in Europe and the Middle East. So I don't think. I mean, there might be. There maybe there will, maybe there won't be more rate cuts. Even if there are, that doesn't automatically bring mortgage rates down. That's the other thing people forget, right? Mortgage rates are based on swap rates, and swap rates are based on things like gilt yields and stuff. And so it's much more what's happening in the financial markets. Yes, of course, a Bank of England base rate cut definitely helps. But it is not that everyone just thinks, oh, if they cut rates, everything will go to the moon, and it just doesn't. So, and this shouldn't affect people who are trying to move. If you're going to move, you're going to move, and any rate cut's going to be very, very small and not make a big difference to mortgage rates. P says, adjusted for inflation, I'm offering my London buy-to-let flat for sale at a third of the price paid in 2011. Wow. Have I read that correctly? You're selling it once adjusted for inflation. I get that the inflation is obviously a big deal there. You're selling it for 2/3 off the value you bought in 2011, so 13 years ago. I think, so you're saying, right, if the prices have come down, how can the government say there's an affordability crisis? Well, in England, it's still 8.6 times salary, times the average salary to buy the average house, which is very high. That's what they're talking about. There will, of course, be variations around that place, but I don't know what the price of this flat is in relation to London average salaries. Also, you've got to factor in for flats affordability, including service charges and that kind of stuff. There is definitely an affordability crisis. Nationally speaking, only the top 10% of earners can afford an average priced house. That is an affordability crisis by any standards. Yeah, Kim Thomas says now the Department for Work and Pensions wants to make companies responsible for the long-term sick. A job is not a marriage contract. I haven't read about that. If that's true, then that really is either the Labour government trying to put businesses out of business, small businesses especially, or it's the Labour government just demonstrating yet again how much it doesn't understand that business is not this fountain of money where businesses can just afford to pay for everything. They really are. They really are doing a lot of bad stuff here. Jean-Marc says, I think P's got his figures wrong somehow. Listen, it's not. It's not impossible. If P bought with Help to Buy in 2011, I know Help to Buy didn't exist in 2011. It came in 2013, didn't it? But if it was a new build in 2011, and maybe there've been problems with it, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I'd be pretty astonished if it was that much off. Right, guys, I've got to go. I've still got lots of work to do tonight before I get to bed, and I've got a very long day and a very important day tomorrow. Wish me luck. It's a really important day with new Best Agent partners to help the whole Best Agent concept and project and public house price index get off the ground, fix the housing market, make it easier to move. Thanks for your feedback on that GB News interview, by the way. It's weird. They go so quickly, and I wasn't expecting him to start asking about stuff other than housing, which he did. So I lost some of the time I wanted to talk about housing. But anyway, I've got to go. If you are new, welcome. You can get hold of me, buymeacoffee.com/mhwc. There's membership or there's extras where you can book calls with me, one-to-one calls, or you can join the Movers Club. This Wednesday, it's the Charlie and Stig show on Wednesday night at 10 o'clock. And for those of you who haven't joined that and want to join, we've got a lot to go through this week, actually, with this jobs data and the ONS data, and there's a lot to get our teeth into. And I'll be in person with Stiggy again this week. If I get my choice, it'll be whiskey again, not wine. And for those of you who don't know what the Charlie and Stig show is, click on that link or go to that link and you'll read all about it. Guys, I'm really tired. Got to go. Have a good one. Thanks very much. Find me if you need me on my website, mhwc.co.uk. And don't forget to make sure you've got everything in place before you move. Your mortgage, your conveyancing, get it done in advance. Don't take estate agents' recommendations. I will see you guys Wednesday evening, 8 o'clock for the usual Wednesday weekly workshop for just live Q&A. All right. Not sure who this week's guest is going to be yet, but I will sort that out before Wednesday. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Good night.